What do you say to the person that is afraid of change or even just resistant to change?
One of the biggest things that I would say is that I am where I am now, able to handle change and adapt with and navigate change. With my visual impairment, I'm quite severely visually impaired. And existing as a disabled woman, you are facing change all the time.
If you look back at all of the scary things in your life, the changes and anything you've outgrown, your survival rate in getting through all of those things is 100%. I'm trying to record a podcast, and this guy has
Hi,
popped
Junior.
into my chair. Hi, Junior. The Velcro Visla, your podcast guest. You never
Today on
know.
Lovely Podcast, Junior, and maybe his daddy Poco will make an appearance as well.
Poco's hiding in his little cave. He's happy.
He's in his cozy cave.
He's in his cozy cave because that's what Vislas do.
But you do have good coworkers.
Yes, I have helpers. Junior, can you not be in the podcast today? Hey, can you not be in the podcast today? Nope.
He doesn't care.
Bottom line, Junior is looking outside for squirrels. That is what they do. It is springtime, and that is the time of change and squirrels and all of those things. Poco literally just
Aly, do you think change is bad or good? When you think of change, or if you're watching, is change bad? Is it good? Is it in between?
I think for most people, change is really hard. For me, I love change, and we can talk about that. And that some of that was hardwired in me because I'm just kind of unusual in that way, I think. But I think it's a big factor of how we grew up and how we had to learn to adapt and pivot and figure out that change can be good. So we can talk about that.
I hear a couple of things here. I hear, number one, that change is a teachable, learnable skill when it comes to navigating what change is like and figuring out how to make it an impactful part of your life for the people around you and for yourself. And you can grow into change versus grow out of things behind you. You can cling to the past, or you can run towards what you're changing. And the second thing I hear is that you said you're a little bit wired for that, but I think you can rewire. So if you're listening today or watching our podcast today, and we say change, and you're thinking about the changes happening in your life, and you're thinking about changes in the past, how those look, changes in the current stance of life, things that you know are going to change. Maybe you're going to send a child off to college, or you're going to have a baby, or you're going to have a new job, or you have to move. Whatever change is coming in your life, which is always inevitable, change is going to happen when you plan it or when you don't. Some of it is wired, but some of it is a purposeful rewire of kind of the story you tell and the things that you've dealt with in the past, that it can be a beneficial thing.
So, Andrea, when I think about change, it brings me to a question that I want to ask you, which is, do you personally feel like you are motivated to go forward in a way that moves you towards something you want or away from something that you don't want?
The answer is different for different parts of my life, because I think it was a reflection of where I was and being able to process. I'm such a naturally optimistic woman that I would love to tell you that every time a big change or thing happened in my life, that I would approach it with optimism and sunshine and rainbows about what's coming in my life, because you're making a change and it's going to be great. But in reality, that's not always the case. In reality, there was at least a mix of change, because like you and I embrace change now in our lives, and we've kind of lived on the planet long enough to understand change can bring around great things and innovation. It doesn't mean just because we like the change that is coming, or we can embrace and see ahead that this is going to be a good thing, it doesn't make that change process easy in the time of change. It makes us focus differently. It makes us more perseverant, but it doesn't take away the uncomfortableness of change, I would say. So, you and I are in different seasons in different things, but one thing we both did recently is move houses. And you can not look forward to moving because packing is overwhelming or the task of doing it when you're really busy. I moved at Christmas time, not the best plan, but that's what happened. And so I, in one hand, was overwhelmed by the tasks. And then on the other hand, I was so excited because I knew it's going to bring, after I do all the work, it's going to bring new joy and literally new light because I have more light, more windows. Like that's what I focused on to get me through.
Yes. You have to understand you are very unique in that way, in that you do have the gift of optimism that allows you to see in the midst of a hard task, that allows you to see, for lack of a better word, and here's the cliche, the light at the end of the tunnel and what that change might bring. That is highly unusual. So, what do you say to the people who really get scared by change, who love status quo, who think, oh my gosh, and I'm not just talking about moving in the example that you
Of
gave,
course,
but
yeah.
what do you say to the person that is afraid of change or even just resistant to change because where we are now is kind of comfortable?
Well, I think that one of the biggest things that I would say is that I am where I am now and able to handle change and adapt with and navigate change much easier now because I've had a lot of practice. I've had more practice than the average person because with my visual impairment, if you haven't seen the podcast before, I'm quite severely visually impaired. And existing as a disabled woman, you are facing change all the time. So anytime I go to a new restaurant, I'll get on Google Maps to go find out what the front door looks like so I can get there when I get in get in the restaurant or get dropped off. And then um, I'll look at interior pictures of the place I'm going to find where the ladies' restroom is so I can be as independent as I can. For anyone who's afraid of change, the biggest tool I can give you is to not be afraid to practice change because the more you practice it on purpose with the framework of what you're framework and a lens of what am I going towards? What am I going to gain from being willing to go through this change? And make that your fuel, make that your focus point. So in my case, where I'm talking about, I'm going to go Google map the front of that building. So I'm going to know where the front door is. And I'm going to go look at pictures on Yelp of the inside so I can find where the restroom would be. What I'm gaining from that is a totally different level of confidence. It puts me more on an even playing field where I'm comfortable. I know where the stairs are in the restaurant. I've also looked at the menu because it makes it easier for me to figure out, be more decisive on a menu when it's really hard for me to read a menu and I'm slow in the dark. Um, Oops, but if I didn't get a chance to do that and I'm somewhere spontaneous that's new, I take out my phone and I take photos of it. I don't put the big light on and make it crazy. I just take pictures of the menu and then I can pull it up to my face and zoom in. And so those are all changes to what would be a normal pattern.
But I also feel like that is the adaptability in you. I mean, that is
It is.
adaptability is a character trait that you are using to help you embrace change. So, in that specific example, for me, I think it's important to highlight because all of us, in the face of change, of any kind of change, whether that feels super scary in the moment or not, that character trait of adaptability is so critically important because that's what gives us the flexibility amongst the vulnerability of the change that's coming forward. So
Agree.
I'm
And being
glad that you're
adaptable
highlighting that.
is a skill of being adaptable is part of the skill of handling change. So it's a tool in your toolbox. If you are a more rigid personality that needs everything systemized exactly the same way, that will be a skill you would benefit from practicing to figure out how can you adjust in real time to make the setting better or easier for you and for people around you.
So, what do you think change is so important in our lives? Why do you think embracing that part of our lives is so important?
Well, no matter what we do in our lives, change is coming. And it can be kind of a predictable thing. Like if you know you're wanting to have a family and you're now pregnant and you're going to have the baby, that's change you clearly planned on. And you are excited for the baby to come. You can see the other end of the tunnel, but you might not realize it's actually really hard. And there's sleepless nights and there's things that happen. And then they grow up and they're 18 and you're still parenting because that's what it always is. And mine are 26 and 24, and I'm still parenting. And so yours are similar age. And these are things that in our brain we might have created how it's going to be and what it's going to look like. But every single time reality deviates from what we expected, that's change. It's an opportunity to practice change. It's an opportunity to get comfortable with change. So, if you ordered something at a restaurant and they delivered it and something was wrong about what they delivered, what you didn't order, you can say, I didn't want cheese on this because maybe you don't like the taste of cheese and they put cheese on it. Then you can decide, okay, well, how am I going to adapt to this? Am I going to speak up and ask them to make the change because that's obviously what I deserve because of what I asked for? Or does it matter that much to where you're going to go, you know what? I'm good, no big deal. I ordered it with no cheese, but I'm going to just go ahead and eat it. You know what I mean? So there's just there's going to be so many minute changes in life. If you practice with the minute changes, knowing what you want and knowing how you want to communicate, what story you're going to tell yourself, I think that's preparing us all for the big life-changing changes that will also happen. A diagnosis or a divorce or a new career path that you didn't expect to have or any of a million other things that can happen. It can become first less intimidating and then it can become empowering because you realize you had the capacity to practice and learn the skill of adaptability and managing your change so that you get the reward of what's at the end of that change. What is it for you?
What is what for me?
What are you going to say to people who are afraid of change that may be sitting here watching right now and say, I'm super overwhelmed. I'm trying to change something in my fitness, or I'm trying to change something in my family dynamic or my work dynamic. But I don't know how to go about it. And I'm so overwhelmed by it. I'm just going to ignore it until something else happens to give me the scoot
Sure.
to actually implement.
Sure. Well, I would say, first of all, the feeling that you're having about change that's in front of you that's making you feel overwhelmed, the feeling of overwhelm is very valid and it's
Yes.
allowed. And that's not something I would ever argue. What you feel is what you feel. That my challenge and my encouragement to you, if you are feeling that overwhelm or that fear of change that lies ahead or the uncertainty that lies ahead, my encouragement to you in that is to pay attention to what it is that you are making that change mean in your life, because it's probably the story that's in between your ears that's making you feel that way. The way you feel, certainly valid, absolutely true, not going to argue. The story between your ears, probably not so true, at least not true all the time. So understand that even though you may feel overwhelmed, scared, uncertain, and that's the meaning you're tying to it, you still have the responsibility and the ability to put a different meaning to what that change might mean. It does take a lot of courage to face change and be intentional about that, because it means you have to outgrow the older version of yourself wherever you are now in order to get to the version of yourself where you want to be. You have to go through change to be able to achieve that and the next better, wiser, stronger, smarter version of yourself. whatever it is that lies ahead and the most fulfilling. And if you're in business, the change beyond that change is the greatest innovations, for example, that happen. So my encouragement to you would be, number one, pay attention and acknowledge and love the feeling that you're with, but also be intentional about the meaning that you're assigning to that change again, and also understand, like, wow, you are so courageous for going forward anyway, for being scared, going forward anyway, in the name of what is possible and what is likely and what could be without the crystal ball. It's really cool to be able to shift that lens and see and see the weight come off and feel the peace come in your heart when you're able to do that. Because here's what I do know for sure. Here's what Junior knows for sure that if you look back at all of the scary things in your life, the changes and anything you've outgrown over the entire season of your life, anything that was really, really hard, your survival rate in getting through all of those things is 100%. You got through all of it. And I hope that you can look back and know that through all of those hard things and all of those changes that you've already been through in the past, that has equipped you more and more and more each time. It has made you wiser, smarter, and more equipped for all that is ahead. And that is a beautiful gift to have.
Yeah, it is. That brings me to, I really want to hone in a little bit better on that, because anybody that's here that's stuck or afraid of change or struggles with change, which is most people, I first want to identify, how have we handled change in the past? How have we faced it coming into it, during it, after it, and now today reflecting on it? If you think about the big changes in your life, I mean, I guess it could be little changes too, but the big changes in your life, when those changes were happening, what stories were you telling yourself? And what mindset did you have coming into it? Fear of change or embracing of change or excitement because of what's after the change? I think that will tell you a good amount about your starting point of when the future changes happen. If you don't like how the last changes went, and then you identify that you were super negative or highly resistant, oh, but then you actually did the change because you had no choice, and then it was amazing. Like, you know how everybody overuses the analogy of a caterpillar and a butterfly for change and metamorphosis and all that.
Yes.
So when a caterpillar makes itself in the chrysalis, a little cocoon thing, to change into a butterfly, it has to do a whole bunch of work to make this little cocoon. And then it has to literally dissolve its body and remake to rebuild the wings. And that sounds horrifying, sounds gross, it sounds painful, like I don't know what's going on in there. And it's none of my business. What I do know is that's what change can feel like. It can feel that gross, ugly, painful, and frozen, stuck in time. But then when you come out of that change, you might not have known what's coming. This beautiful butterfly can emerge and open its wings and dry its wings and fly. But the butterfly doesn't always, it's not like it has a mirror. So it doesn't know how pretty it is. It just sees straightforward. It can't see its own wings. So it's also important when we're talking about change and what that frame looks like is to put people around us who can support, encourage, and show us the blooming of who we are in our lives. It's another tool
Your
in the
community
toolbox.
matters.
Community matters. That's why we do this podcast, because women need to be able to come here and talk to us. In the comments section, you can talk to us and we answer them. And you need a support network. We're going to support each other here. And for someone to be able to see how beautiful your butterfly wings are because you went through a really hard thing is really important, because you're going to be able to frame that every change forward, knowing that, as you said earlier, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So we can be purposeful about that. We might not have the energy or the resources in our body and soul to see the good, but others can see the good, especially the people that we care about. And if we put those people in a position in our lives to be a support network or watch the podcast so you can be supported and you subscribe, then it's just an incredible thing to have someone observe the good and share it back to you because you may not see it yourself. Do you agree?
I agree, and I think I agree, especially agree on the community part. I I also want to, give a nod to the fact that when we are looking at change in front of us and all of the crazy, scary, hard things are still ahead of us, and we're not to the rewarding part yet. I think it's really important to know that not only is our community important, the way that we are speaking to ourselves, the community inside our own heart, inside our own heads is really important. So, to the extent that we can have, steal a little bit of the optimism that's so hardwired in you, the gift that you have, Andrea, is that you do have a sunshine in you that is a little harder for most of us to have in a lot of cases. And so, number one, recognize where your own gifts are. Number two, use what you have. So, if you are better at adaptability, that's going to help you do that. If you're better at the optimism or hope, that's going to help you do that when you lean there. So, to know
By the
that,
way, those are all three L3 character traits that we talk about often. And
yes,
again, the characters traits that can be learned and developed. That's why we're saying that handling change for efficiency and greater impact and greater good in your life is a teachable, learnable skill because it's made up of these things that Ally's talking about, the optimism, the hope, the adaptability. I think that's something that's empowering to know that you actually have agency with these skills.
yes, they're all learnable skills. And here's what I will say about change it takes a lot of courage to outgrow your old life and bloom into the next version of your life. And sometimes that happens very quickly. Sometimes it happens over a great amount of time. Sometimes it happens within one circumstance or a series of circumstances. But it does take a lot of courage. And to Brene Brown's research point, courage does not happen without some sort of vulnerability, without some sort of ability to be exposed and then go forth anyway, bravely. And as she would say, to be daring greatly. To her point and to her research, I think this is a really valuable thing to pay attention to as we are embracing change in our lives, because every time we embrace change and every time we are willing to, in her words, dare greatly and embrace what's next through that vulnerability, every time we do that, there is a magical thing that happens, and it's called building confidence. So, to the extent that we can embrace the change that is scary, that is uncertain, that is hard, that does take a lot of work, on the other side of that is some really, really wonderful opportunities to grow the confidence in our lives, to understand how valuable we really are as women, as teachers, as humans, as whatever space we're in. There's a huge gift in being able to do that. And I just want to encourage everyone to know that if you're in the hardest place of change that is in front of you, it's okay. And we're here with you at Lead Love Legacy. I think that's a big part of why we do what we do. And the good news for all of this is that it's learnable. All of this is a learnable skill. It takes practice. And to your point, Andrea, a really great community around you. And I think that's what's so fun about what we get to do every single day, whether we are in an arena, whether we are giving a keynote, whether we're sitting here on a podcast or just having conversation in our community of women around us. So I think I'm happy to be able to share those conversations on a daily basis.
Same. But I want to jump to the next kind of phase of this evaluation. So a minute ago, I asked
We're doing an
everybody
evaluation.
evaluation of change in our own hearts. Like it's not like
Yeah.
it's not like a quiz. Uh, it's just looking in the mirror because a lot of times we talk about things and the goal of the discussion is to help you change your life in all these great ways. And one of the things we just said was, look at the challenges that you've had in the past and the changes and identify how you looked at those change. What lens were you using for the change? So maybe it was something you dreaded and you were super scared, and maybe it was something you were excited about, but in order to get to the good part, you recognized you had to go to the bad part first. Maybe there was no bad part at all. It was just change, and you have anxiety because of change, because that's super normal. Um, but once you know that, I'd love to know, what did you learn from looking back today about those changes? Did you handle them in a way that was more peaceful in your life? Did it create more peace? Did it make the change harder? Could you have done anything differently? Because those answers, if you're really in your soul and your heart honoring the truth, could you have done this change differently? And or if so, what would it look like? Because that's what you can be on purpose to deploy when the next change happens. And the change is coming, as we've said. So, how are you going to be different now that you took a second to look in the mirror, evaluate where you are, and congratulations if you are the people that really love change and can't wait for the next new move. But most people aren't. So, how are you going to evaluate what you've done in the past? How you faced it in the past? I mean, are there any changes for you, Allie, that you would make going forward? Or can you think of a time in your life? Because I know you and I are both accustomed to change now and we deal with it in a great way. But can you think of times in your life where something happened, it was a change, and then looking back on it today, you would reshape how that went?
I think maybe if I thought hard enough, I could probably come up with something. But I think one of the gifts that come with change and being able to reflect backwards on change is that, just like a moment, for example, when we fell short of a goal or we failed at doing something we tried to achieve or whatever it is, the beauty of being able to look backwards on change is that we can see so clearly what we learned, how it shaped us, how we are different now because of that. So, my tendency, my lens after decades of going through scary changes and all of those things and hard stuff is that I look at it and I go, maybe I would have done it differently. I kind of wonder what would have happened if I would have taken this path instead of that path. But at the end of the day, for me, it's all about celebrating the journey that we went on, period. So I don't think I look back at opportunities or changes or forks in the road to say, oh man, I wish I would have done it differently. I look at those and go, that was pretty cool. And sometimes I look at it and I go, that was crazy. I cannot believe we went that direction or we made
Yeah,
that
but I
decision or we
think
were willing to make that change.
I hear
And
what
we
you're
were
saying though,
able
Allie,
to.
but I think you are also an anomaly, that the average person listening to this conversation has some things in their past that they would benefit from reflecting on, to genuinely look in the mirror and say, because I didn't weather this change easily, or there was friction with it, or whatever, I don't want to live in that space again. What can I do to prevent it? And that's what I mean by practicing and being on purpose, is being aware of your typical patterns. So that's where I'm trying to dig in a little bit to say, um, what does that look like in your life? Because if you find change difficult, there's a reason it's difficult. What is it? And really consider what that might look like. Maybe you've had a career situation where changes were happening that maybe you didn't expect it, and maybe you think, well, I wasn't kind of mentally prepared or physically prepared or financially prepared. So one thing that I might try to work on now is actual steps that I can be more financially prepared for a layoff, or more mentally prepared if I need to move to a new city, or what things will really look like if that position change should happen again. Um, it's not that simple. I'm not trying to simplify because it's not necessarily easy for everyone to plan financially. Um, I mean, the world costs what it costs right now. So I'm not blowing that off. I'm just saying what what lens can we use in a helpful way to look back and build new patterns that are better.
And in that reflection, Andrea, here's what I know. The research does tell us that at the end of our days, as we are reflecting back on our lives, the research does tell us that most of our regrets and reflections on those forks in the road that you're talking about, they tend to be regrets on what we didn't do, not what
Yep.
we did do. And so
Yep.
sometimes when we are looking at how we handled change or how we handled a certain season of our life, when we really needed to outgrow one season in order to embrace the next, the thing we should be paying attention to isn't always just what we did or what we should do. It quite often is, what did we not do in that moment? And this speaks very much to how important it is to be very, very clear. It's the foundation of the L3 method of leadership. Be very, very clear on what we stand for, what we want to be known for, what matters to us, who matters to us, what will we fight for. So when we are that clear, all of the decisions and all of those forks in the road become so much easier, because those decisions either serve the mission of what's important to us and the legacy that we intend to leave, or they don't. And if they don't, that decision is made. And the decision to move forward in that path, to outgrow the old life and come into the new one, to shift the thing in business, to do whatever it is that you are trying to make a decision on, all of those decisions become that much easier because we have a guidepost and a light to follow in that way. And I think that is what helps us go forth in such a way that we can always be growing. And it gives us the lens to where even when we make mistakes, even when we fall short, we still can look through that lens with an understanding of where we are going and why it was so important and how to get better with each pivot that we make.
I'm on it. This is why this podcast is happening, because I think there's going to be different parts of every podcast that people can relate to more in their individual situation. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to live lives that we're proud of. We're all trying to lead boldly and love deeply and live our legacies out loud, because we're not interested in letting life happen to us. We're interested in creating the big and wonderful life that we were created to live. And if we don't know how to find that, we're looking to find it. And that's what this whole community is about. That's what the whole conversation is about. So rather it be change or developing other character traits that will lead to these things, the community is amazing because it can support each other in doing it. And I can't wait to see the comment section, because I want to know what change is coming up for you and what are you excited about and what are you struggling with, and let everyone just lift you up in that path. It's amazing. I just want to hear not just the scary stories, but the success stories of what happened when you did make change. What happened when you found your optimism and built your adaptability and created your own hope. How'd it work out for you? Because there is a way to find that sunshine. And sometimes you have to generate that from within. And sometimes you can draw it from your community around you. And sometimes it's just naturally there if we're very fortunate. But it can be generated from within, and it can be generated from the people around you if you don't have it within right now, because not everyone will have it. Even I don't have it all the time. So if I'm struggling, I'm leaning into the girlfriends and to the people in my life who support me and love me the most. I'll probably call you because it's going to be something. And then you can be a light for me and vice versa. So we're very fortunate for this community.
I 100% agree. So I'm so thrilled all of you could join us on this podcast. Here's to leading boldly, loving deeply, and living your legacy. See you next time.
Thanks for joining us today on the Lead Love Legacy podcast.
Remember, lead boldly, love deeply, and live your legacy.
If this episode encouraged you, like and subscribe and share it with someone who needs it.
And join us next time as we continue to build leaders and legacies for life.